My name's Herb Kaighan, and I have a lot of things that I represent, all relevant to what you all represent. Today I'm representing myself in the capacity as a person in recovery. Did you see the movie, The Anonymous People? All right? It's wonderful. If you haven't seen it, maybe a little controversial, but probably not, at least from my standpoint. But they suggest to people in recovery, because of the honoring of the tradition in Alcoholics Anonymous of not declaring that you're in a membership of 12-step, they say a person in recovery. It's really cool. I like that. Anyway, but I am also in 12-step recovery. I'm 30 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know exactly where to begin because I have a presentation and it's going to take an hour and I don't have an hour. But what I heard, and I'm very comfortable with that, what I heard here is a lot of people, some people representing their product, and that's really important, and I was interested in all of what you said. I'm a marketing director for Torrance Memorial Hospital's IOP on a part-time basis. And I've been doing that for 5 years, which introduced me into the world of professional recovery and mental health treatment, which has just been a real gift. I've also recently, 6 months ago, brought in to Rebos, that's sober spelled backwards. We get cute, don't we? Yeah, right. And they're an IOP in Culver City, and they brought me in as their spiritual director. All right, go figure. And so it's wonderful. So I have a variety of things. And today I want to talk about spirituality. I want to talk about the practice of awareness and action. It's really steps 11 and 12. I think on the flyer it said consciousness and compassion. Just synonyms for the same thing. I probably won't go through the entire slide presentation because that's really, I'm not here to finish this. I'm here to be with you. And I met a man in 1988, 25 years ago. I was 5 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was going to a meeting every day. And I had a sponsor I was calling every day. And in 5 years, I did not change. I did not know that change was important. I did not know that change was possible. And I certainly didn't know the methodology of change. I was clueless. All right? But at 5 years of sobriety, I heard somebody share with the passion that a lot of you talked about in terms of representing your own experience and product. And it was different. And after he shared, I came up to him and I chatted with him for about an hour about what he had shared about his experience of a spiritual awakening. And for the next year, he helped me. But when he got to know me, he said, Herb, he said, oh my God, you have so much information. I mean, you have a graduate education in theology. You were a monk for 7 years. 7 years of silence. I haven't stopped talking since. And then I studied psychology. I got a graduate education in psychology. And then I did the self-help stuff of the 60s and 70s. You know, yoga, S-training, LSD, Johnny Walker Black Label. I got a lot of information. And then I'm in AA for 5 years, and I'm going to meetings every day, and I'm reading the book, and I got a sponsor. And he said, Herb, you just got a lot of information. But you have no transformation. It hasn't touched your heart. It hasn't touched your experience. I listened to that. And over a period of 12 months, he took me through the 12 steps. And I didn't realize that Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual program. All my life I've been a seeker. And I thought that was it. I'm a seeker, just deep thirst, and I'm going to go for it here, and I'm going to go for it there, wherever I hear it. I spent a lot of time and a lot of money with really good people, and it's not their fault, but nothing changed. But I didn't know something should change. I didn't know it was possible. And as the result of the 12-step methodology, I was changed and I discovered a spiritual awakening. It was a gift given to me, not a product developed by me. I submitted to a process. The Buddhists have this wonderful picture of the Buddhist master standing there pointing the way to the light, pointing the way to the mystery, pointing the way to enlightenment. And unfortunately, the students begin worshiping the finger. The difference between spirituality and organized religion. Organized religion is the finger pointing to spirituality. But so many times, because of the human dimension, it becomes a closed system. A 12-step program can become every bit as closed just because it's filled with human beings. I'm going to try a little bit of the slide. And so I've been very impressed with the process of recovery, and many of you are at the base level of establishing physical sobriety, either in the outpatient, in the inpatient, or lots of other kinds of support systems to that basic. Because if you don't get that, you don't get anything else. And Maslow talks about emotional sobriety and social sobriety and psychological sobriety, my terms. So this is all about emotional sobriety here, and here's the spiritual sobriety. That final actualization, that way of life that was in the title of what we do here. And the methodology of the 12 steps, Bill says it so clearly. Bill Wilson wrote the big book, founded Alcoholics Anonymous. He says it so clearly in the big book, I think it's on page 29. He says this is a methodology for finding God, for finding higher power. Whatever it is, energy, universal spirit, some power, higher self as the Buddhists call it, some power other than yourself. All right? And so the 12 steps are establishing a relationship with this power. That's the whole point of the first 3 steps, is to establish a relationship. But you get to name it. The 12-step people don't have any dogma or anything that you have to believe. There are a few things that you have to do, but not anything that you have to believe. And the transformative process for me was right here. Let's see, that's not shining too well. Is right here in the relationship with myself, where I did a deep inventory for the very first time and full disclosure, and saw at depth the nature of my problem as being the spiritual malady, unmanageability. I'm speaking to the clinicians who are not in 12-step. I'm speaking to the students. Oh my God, half the group is students, pre-doctoral, and all the rest of it. It's wonderful, who may not be in 12-step. Because you will be treating people who either are in 12-step or should be in 12-step, if that's the route they choose for their recovery, and you need to know the vocabulary. So I'm here to give you some information, absolutely. But I hope as the result of something I say, or something that you see, or something that you will have an experience that will connect the information to your passion for helping and your skills at being able to help them and direct them. Because if you don't know, you don't have the alternative. If you haven't had the experience, you won't have the passion. And the next couple steps are about my relationship with others. And the key to recovery, to sustained recovery, is right here. This is what creates emotional sobriety, and this is what creates that full final realization and self-actualization, is this way of life, which is just a repeat of the first 9 steps. All right, so it's about brain transformation. If you are interested in anything to do with the brain and transformation and well-being and mindfulness, read Dan Siegel's work. He's a psychiatrist in UCLA. He's doing a lot of work on the research on the brain and brain plasticity. I'm not here to talk much about the brain. What I know is that we have a lizard brain It tells us whether we're to eat it or screw it. They would be out. Come on. That's the lizard brain, right? And then we have a limbic system, which then creates in the middle cortex, it creates the emotions and our anger and our fear and our dishonesty. All right, the ability to survive is the whole point of that. But fortunately for our human beings, we have developed a cortex and a neocortex, which allows us as an executive function to manage the vegetative brain and the animal brain. And that's the whole point, not to control it, but to manage it. And that's what the steps do. Now for you men out there, you might recognize your own local chemistry. All right, I'm not going to go through it because I don't have time, but you can quickly read it and see the listening particle. The listening particle is right there. In contrast to the female brain, where the listening is connected to the sex. So you need to pay attention to some of that. All right? Yeah, it's kind of fun. All right. The problem is that I did not know that I did not know, and I could not see that I did not see. That's a phrase that has come to me. It's kind of my moniker. All right? Because it's absolutely descriptive of my own experience. Oh my God, I'm overtrained in terms of theology, philosophy, and psychology. I've got the information. But I didn't have any touch from it. I came out of the monastery looking for her. Well, I found her, many, And then I looked for that sense of peace and ease and comfort from the drugs and the alcohol and the money and the power and prestige. And none of it fit. Carl Jung has a great statement. He says, humans are deeply thirsty. Alcoholics are specifically drawn towards spirituality. They have this deep hunger, this deep thirst. Unfortunately, they misread it, they mistranslate it. They have this deep thirst for the spirit, capital S, and they get distracted by spirits with the small s. Yeah, it's in a letter to Bill Wilson, 1961. At the end of the letter, he has a Latin phrase, spiritus contra spiritum. The spirit with a capital S is the antidote to spirits with a small s. See, Bill knew that. He says in the big book that alcohol is not the problem. Alcohol is not the problem. Food is not the problem. All right, sex is not the problem. Money and power is not the problem. Gambling is not the problem. It might be a problem, but it's not the problem. Underneath, the underneath, and you heard it here with some of the sharing about what y'all do, is you need to find that deep, deep source of where does that thirst come from. And Carl Jung speculates that it comes from a hunger for, a thirst for the infinite, and we try to satisfy it with the finite. Bill had that. Bill had that absolute intuition. He said, alcohol is a symptom, bottles are only a symbol. It's not the problem. Well, it is the problem, but you're powerless over it. And once you deal with it, then unless you do some certain things and you have a transformation and you have a spiritual awakening and you maintain it one day at a time, a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition, the next best book next to the big book is a dictionary. And when you look up reprieve, it says a stay of execution. A daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of your spiritual condition. You get to define what spiritual is. You get to define what your behavior is going to be. And just realizing this is how I handle my sponsees. All right? I make suggestions. I have no rules and no regulations. No musts. I have suggestions. I suggest, and there will be consequences if you take my suggestions. If you don't take my suggestions, there will be consequences. Choose your consequences. See, I'm not in charge of your life, and I'm not invested in your recovery. I'm passionate about it, and I will work as hard as you do, but I won't work any harder, and I won't get attached to the results, positive or negative. Some people call me a sociopath, but that's okay. So the problem is that we have a false belief system. And we can't see our beliefs. Notice up there, we can't see the belief except as we go through the behavior, through the attitude, through the feelings. We're doing some analytical work. And we get up to the beliefs. You see, if my glasses are blue, you all are going to be blue. But I won't know you're blue because I'm looking through blue glasses. That's my beliefs. I cannot see my beliefs by directly looking at them because I'm looking through them. And I see who I am. I don't see what there is. I project onto the world my beliefs and who I am. We all do that. We all do that. Bill Wilson in the 12 and 12 in step 10 says it's a spiritual axiom. Whenever I am disturbed, there is something wrong with me. Oh my God, I hate that. Whenever I am disturbed, there is something wrong with me. It's never you. It's always me. Because I'm looking through that belief. And so when I'm disturbed, I need to take a look at what is that belief? What is that belief through which I'm looking? All right? That's the transformation that I experienced. Our culture says we need to know something, feel good about it, and then do it. But the 12-step program and any authentic spirituality has it completely the opposite. It doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter what you feel. It does matter what you do. And when you do differently, you will feel differently. You will know differently. Dan Siegel at UCLA published his research paper 2 or 3 years ago, which he concluded this. Based on research and brain chemistry and all the rest of the stuff that goes with statistically significant results and evidence-based. See, I know the vocabulary. Our way of life is to do inventory. Our way of life is to do prayer and meditation. Our way of life is to be of service and practice principles on a daily basis. This is the way of life, steps 10, 11, and 12. Bill Wilson suggests that at the point where we cross into step 10, which is at the time we're beginning to do step 9, and some of you who may not be familiar with the step process, sometimes I'll clarify that and a lot of times I won't. So if you have questions, even though you might not want to get in the way of a moving bus, raise your hand and ask it, okay? Because I don't have a written script that I'm going on. I have a lot of experience and a lot of passion and a lot of energy about it. And my script is going to be guiding me through here. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Step 9 is about making amends. If I have harmed you, if I knew you, I harmed you. So if I had harmed you, then I call you up and I make an appointment to repair the damage to the best of my ability. All right? While I'm doing that, I need to foster my spiritual life. I need to continue doing steps 1 through 8 that got me to the step 9 process. And because I need as much power as possible. The model that I use is the model that Bill Wilson uses in the big book concerning who are we as human beings. We have a body that has an inclination toward addiction. But that's not the problem. The real problem is that we have a mind that's inclined toward obsession and that we have a will that's in fact conditioned to be selfish. Self-will, self-centeredness is the exact nature of the problem. And we're powerless over it. But once we have, in fact, in some manner, maybe through a sovereign program or maybe through one of your programs, you have, in fact, gotten some stability, physical, emotional, psychological stability, and you've been given some freedom, some abstinence, maybe through therapy, maybe through good religion, maybe through a 12-step program, maybe through a good relationship. I mean, there's so many different ways for it to happen, all right? But once you have that stability, then he tells us that we're recovered. There's some controversy. I try not to get involved in the controversy about recovered versus recovering. Bill Wilson uses recovered consistently, right from the face page of the big book. The story of 100 men and women who recovered. Hello, it's not a controversy, but it's about understanding. It's about the abstinence in the body. I no longer experience the allergy because I'm not using it. It's about the sanity that returns when the obsession is returned. We're not talking about psychiatric or psychological sanity in the 12-step vocabulary. Sanus is the Latin word that is the derivative of sanity. Sanus in Latin is health. All this means is the mind of an alcoholic is not healthy. It's subject to an obsession. It's subject to being taken possession of by a thought. All right? And that's what we mean by powerless. When I put alcohol in my body, something happens chemically, and I want more alcohol beyond my ability to control it. When I don't drink, and I had no drinks for January, and I had no drinks for Lent, and I had no drinks for a 90-day program while I was in S training, all right? Mad Dog Seeker. And yet, it seemed like a good idea after those periods of time were over to drink again. I didn't remember a couple of jails that I had spent some time in. I didn't remember some hospitals that I had spent some time in. I didn't remember the family problems, the financial problems, the physical problems, the employment problems. I forgot to remember. I'm reasonably intelligent, fairly well educated. Wow, it still boggles my mind, this obsession business. I can't explain it, but I can observe it. Oops. So, back to this. The real problem then is the function of the will. We have a mind that allows us to transcend ourselves as humans, which makes us specifically human. We know that we know. No other sentient being can do that. And we have a will that can make a decision to take free actions. Lots of people knew about this particular event. You chose to come here, and then you actually came here. See, we have free will. Some of our will isn't free if it's connected to insanity or if it's connected to allergy, that conditioned response. John Wellwood says that the process of becoming truly human is to, in fact, become acquainted with and recapture our unconditioned self. Some people talk about true self, false self, all right, shadow self, like Carl Jung talked. John Wellwood, if you haven't read it, it's a fabulous book. Spirituality and psychotherapy, and he's sort of a Buddhist-oriented kind of a guy. And he talks about the unconditioned self versus the conditioned self. So the problem is powerlessness. Only a percentage of us have it. 1 out of 10 have the alcohol or drug problem or some other problem. 5 out of 10 are connected to that 1 out of 10. I was glad to hear at lunch, I heard from somebody from the Sovereign program here with a daughter here, and they have a family program. We went through a family program 30 years ago. It stabilized our family. It took 3 years. It's not a quick fix, all right, but it's a very certain fix. I've got a daughter with 23 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, a wife with 30 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and another daughter 23 years in Al-Anon. Stable, spiritually mature, black belt, kick-ass women. Oh man, absolutely, all right? So the problem is unmanageability. What does it look like? What does unmanageability look like? Here it comes from the big book, page 52. I am having trouble with personal relationships. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. I can't control my emotional nature. I am a prey to misery and depression. I can't make a living that satisfies me. I'm a bottomless pit. There's not enough pleasure, money, power, or recognition, is there, Herb? Said the wee small voice when you listen. You heard it in the rooms. Prayer is when you're talking to, in an intimate way, this reality that we name higher power or God. And meditation is when we're listening. All right, what are we listening to? We're listening to our thinking. Bill Wilson had that insight. 2.5 pages in the big book is the foundation of my meditation practice. I have a meditation practice over here. It's a free document. If in fact you're interested in meditation, it might be helpful. It's an outline of the Big Book and the 12 and 12 and some other things from my own personal practice. I also have a meditation on forgiveness, a 3-page document that I prepared about 15 years ago that has stood the test of time. I have a feeling of uselessness. I didn't come out of the monastery after 7 years of silence knowing how to meditate. I didn't know that because I didn't know what meditation was. Look it up in the dictionary. So simple. Directed thinking. A lot of confusion because of the Maharishis and the Yoganandis who came over from the East in the 50s and the 60s. Remember that? Some of you. And they said emptiness, silence, detachment from mind, no thinking, and that's meditation. And we all who didn't know any better go, yeah, bring it on. Well, that's not meditation. In the Western culture's verbiage, vocabulary, meditation, look it up in the dictionary, is directed thinking. It's the use of the mind, the active reflection of the mind. What they talked about, no mind detachment from mind and silence, is contemplation in the Western vocabulary. All right? Now, my personal meditation practice contains about 5 minutes of prayer, about 10 minutes of meditation, and about 20 minutes of contemplation, just from a mixed standpoint. It's not that pure, but I am unhappy. I can't seem to be a real help to other people, nor really care about helping other people, 1988. All right? I cared that you cared and thought that I did help people. I wanted the reputation of helping people, but you know if you're really helping people, it's dirty business. It's messy business. It's inefficient, and it's time-consuming. And they don't appreciate it. Right, exactly. So the problem is that we have beliefs. A Russian philosopher, Gurdjieff, says, humans are asleep dreaming that they are awake. Don't you love that? Humans are asleep dreaming that they are awake. I was, until I was 48 years old. All right? Thinking that I'm a Renaissance man and discovering I'm a Neanderthal. So, I'm in the prison, all right? But I didn't know our troubles are of our own making, like the Big Book says. And so I did the inventory, and I did resentment, fear, dishonesty, and selfishness. This is the step 4 inventory. It's quite analytical. It's not an autobiography. It's looking at behavior, but getting underneath the feelings, getting underneath the attitude, getting underneath the perceptions to come up with the beliefs, to really understand the delusions, the distortions of the beliefs that they have. Well, in the 10th step, he says, when you are disturbed, it's a spot check inventory. 12 and 12 confirms that. You don't do it at night, and you don't do it in writing. You do it on the spot. If I'm disturbed, let's see. I'm just impatient because I want what I want when I want it. And I was rude and angry. Okay. You're the person today, right? I'm so sorry. I was impatient, and I'll try to do better next time. And by the way, it would be okay to call me on it the next time right up front, not let me get away from it. I mean, that's an amend that I take care of right now. I'm experiencing it. I pray because I'm powerless. I discuss it with somebody because I'm human. Accountability is the single most important piece of my recovery. Willingness and accountability. Having a sponsor, having a therapist, having a spiritual director, having a mentor, teacher, step guide, having friends that will risk the relationship to tell me the truth and hurt my feelings. These are the kind of people that we need to surround ourselves with if, in fact, we're going to stay well and even get progress in our spiritual and emotional evolution. So the results are just going to be the opposite of what we've been experiencing all our life, is forgiveness and trust and honesty and love. I get the question all the time in my workshops. Well, how do I know what God's will is and what is my will? Well, it's really straightforward. If you're experiencing this, you're in self-will. If you're experiencing this, you're in God's will. And I'm a real practical guy. All right? And this came to me a while back. I cannot trust what I say or what I think. More so today, but not absolutely. What I can trust and look at are my feet. If I don't know who you are, I watch how you behave. Because how you behave is who you are. My head will always lie to me, but my feet never will. My feet tell me the truth. My feet tell me who I am. I have these conversations. Well, meditation, is that important? Oh my God, thousands of years of people, books, libraries, trainings. Yeah, meditation is so important. It's the 11th step, don't you know? It is so important. I mean, it's so important for your spiritual life. Do you do it? Don't have time. Well, you see, your head tells you it's important, but your feet tell you it's unimportant, that it's not of value. Because if you're not doing it, it's not of value. All right? That's very confrontive, right here, right now. If you're not doing it, it's because it's not of value to you. Bill Wilson suggests in the 12 and 12 a value proposition. As air, water, sunshine, and food are to the body sustenance and survival, prayer and meditation are to the soul and spirit sustenance and survival. Do you believe it? Please.
But is there a difference between it would be of value to you if you did it?
Oh, absolutely it would be of value if you did it. Sure.
Versus
but
you're just not conscious of the fact that it would be of value.
Oh, there you go. See, you're not conscious of the value that it would be of value. All right? And that's why I love the whole development in the world of psychology, science, Buddhism, and in sort of the lay language and books about mindfulness. Because it doesn't matter the door that you open. You walk through that door, the Spirit grabs you and takes you and walks you along. That's my experience with it. All right? The results of all of my effort are disproportionate to my contribution. And that's the definition of a spiritual awakening. So yeah, I'm so glad you said that. But this is emotional sobriety, the 10th step. Forgiveness is a process. Oh, I looked it up. A dictionary again. All right? Look at my hand. Forgiveness is a decision to release them. That's what the dictionary said. A decision to release them. The prayer, Lord's Prayer and St. Francis' Prayer, they all say, to the extent I release them, I am released. It's paradoxical. It's one of those spiritual things that don't make any sense. You have to give it away to keep it. The more you give it away, the more you get it. It doesn't make any sense, but anybody who has operated on those principles know the deep, really, truth of them. And so rather than being in a prison, which I have no control over, I realize that I'm in a prison of my own making. There's nothing holding the bars except my hands. There's nothing holding the bars except my belief about the bars. There's freedom. See, this is the methodology of the 12 steps is so simple. Not easy, but so simple. And of course it has a spiritual connotation, but it also has a psychological connotation. And that is to the extent that we realize that we have constructed the wall for our security and that wall became a prison. When we realize that, then we will begin the dismantling of the wall. We will begin the process of the dismantling of the bars and the prison system. It's a turning from my self-centeredness to my other-centeredness. So the Big Book suggests that the unmanageability, those bedevilments that we saw earlier, are a result, look up now, are a result of my selfishness and self-centeredness. I'm powerless over it, and I can't even reduce it much by wishing or trying on my own power. Theology, philosophy, psychology, self-help, and AA. I'm still totally self-centered, and I don't know it, and I don't realize it. And I submit to this process, and it cracks me open. The Spirit enters. I do some work, and I am turned. I am turned in a relationship with a capital O. I am turned in a relationship in service to others the community about me, especially the people in my fellowship. And that's spiritual sobriety. Prayer and meditation, Bill talks about it. You do it at night. You do it at night, all right? And inventory. How did it go today? Did I get disturbed and not realize I was disturbed, and did I not take care of it, or should I take care of it tomorrow? In the morning, ask God to direct our thinking. It's a very complicated prayer. Listen really carefully. God, please direct my thinking. See, it's not. The real complication part, where the rubber meets the road is, then I begin thinking, trusting that it's God-inspired, and I listen to the thinking. Inspiration, coming from the Greek word spiros, meaning breath. I am breathing in the Spirit. I am listening to the wee small voice. I am listening to the Spirit. All right? It takes practice, like playing the piano. You start with Twinkle, Twinkle, and if you have any talent and you are consistent in your practice and you have a good teacher, someday you might be playing, I think, Tchaikovsky or something like that. Practice. I've been practicing now my meditation for 25 years. I don't miss. Morning and evening. I don't miss. All right? And what I find is what Bill says in the big book. It makes us more efficient. The time I invest in my meditation is amply made up in the productivity and the sense of ease and comfort that I have during the daytime. So I used to say you can't get here from there. How can you get like a guy who's going to jail and completely blacking out and da-da-da-da-da-da, and now being able to talk like this? You can't get here from, and then I realized the other day, Pat was at the conference, I realized, oh, the way I should have ended is, you can obviously get here from there because here I am. All right? 5 years ago, the seminary asked me to come back to teach spirituality to their fourth-year theologians through the 12-step process. A full 2-unit, full semester course. How do you get here from there? With some effort, but a whole lot of grace. Grace and willingness. That change is a change in the way we think and feel and behave, but it's done to us, not by us. We carry that message. It's an immunization. Bill says at the top of chapter 7, the beginning page, nothing will ensure immunity. If we have a spiritual disease, this is the spiritual immunization, working with others. If the spiritual disease is my self-centeredness, then in fact, the opposite is the antidote, the spiritual solution. And we practice principles in all our affairs. I have a handout that I had on the chair there, and some of it summarized as what was on here. I didn't go through it because it's not in that order, but it's for you to take away the major points. And one of the handouts has the list of the principles as I've seen them, as I've discerned them, that are connected to each of the steps. Description of the principle itself, the behavior that might go with it. It's a tool that might warrant some reflection and meditation. So there's a lot of moving parts in the 12-step program, and you're probably all familiar with it, but the most important part, and I said this in my opening comment, is accountability with sponsorship. All right? It's an event, process. This recovery thing and this spiritual development, anybody who's in recovery, anybody who's made an effort at personal development, anybody who has in fact consistently or inconsistently made efforts at their own spiritual life, know that it's like a dimmer switch. The dimmer switch goes on at a very low voltage in the beginning. But as you stay pressed up against it, that dimmer switch goes up a notch at a time. And the lights go on, and we get physical sobriety, and then we become transformed, and we get emotional sobriety, and then we have full integration at actualization, that Maslow peak of the pyramid, and we have spiritual sobriety. But the dimmer switch is on a greased axle. It goes two ways, with a little bit of resentment that's held, with a little bit of fear that's not dealt with a little secret, with a little inappropriate sex, with a lot of dishonesty. The Spirit has a shadow, an obstacle that begins to cast the darkness. And the obsession returns, and when the obsession returns, the allergy returns, and we're back into our addiction again. And I heard somebody say that in the room, in their introductions, that once people get recovered, their malady, whatever their problem is, breaks out in other areas. It's classic. Somebody who gets sober becomes a compulsive smoker, or a compulsive worker, or a compulsive gambler, or a compulsive overeater, or a compulsive sex addict, because it breaks out in different ways, because they're not treating the spirit. Oh, hello. They're not treating the spiritual disease. They're going to meetings. They have a sponsor, but they're not doing the work of inventory. They're not doing the work, daily work of meditation. They're not doing the daily work of 24/7 having compassion that manifests in behavior of helping other people. A spiritual awakening is a turning. Well, it's a turning from the disease. I'm just going to go quickly here because this is in your handout, because I want to end up on time. And once again, if you want to know the difference between God's will, by my interpretation, or the harmony that comes from universal principles. All right, let's take a look just for a minute. Gravity is a physical principle. If Dennis read a book on flying, and he really wanted to fly, and he created some wings, and he went to the gym, and he got ripped and buffed and all of that, and he went up to the top of a 30-story building after 6 months of training, and he really tried hard and flapped, and he jumped off a 30-story building, Dennis is going to die. Because gravity doesn't care about Dennis. You see, there are universal principles. You can call them spiritual principles. There are universal principles, all right, in which the world evolves. Humans evolve. And if we go against those universal principles, we will be crushed. When we swim across the river, when we swim upstream, all right, life is really hard. We're going against the flow. This is just a mental image, it's poetic. But when we align ourselves, we become in harmony with universal principles. You don't even have to talk about God or spirituality. All right? You can just talk about universal principles of integrity, fidelity, honesty, kindness, whatever your spiritual principles are. If you transgress them, you will be crushed sooner or later. If you are in harmony with them, in parallel with them, seek them out in your life, you will walk with a sense of ease and comfort, a sense of context, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. I'm just reading Positive Psychology now, Seligman's work, and the title of his book is called Flourish. All right? It's a word I've used for 25 years to describe my life. My life flourished. It's not without problems. It's not without little speed bumps. But I've been given the shock absorbers to handle the speed bumps. It's a change from the self-centeredness to the other-centeredness, and trust God, clean house, help others. That's our way of life. I'm 5 minutes over the end time, but I started late.